Mediators scrambling for Israel-Hamas truce extension as hostages for prisoners swaps get harder. Henry Kissinger was a trusted confidant to President Nixon until the bitter, bizarre end. Japan suspends its Osprey flights after the fatal crash of a U.S. Air Force aircraft. Today is Friday, December 1st, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Mediators are scrambling to extend an Israel-Hamas truce set to expire just after daybreak Friday. This follows daily exchanges of hostages held by Hamas for Palestinians imprisoned by Israel during a week-long pause in fighting. Virtually all of those freed so far have been women and children. Reaching a deal on an extension could prove more challenging, as Hamas, a militant group that has ruled Gaza for 16 years, is expected to set a higher price for the remaining hostages, including Israeli soldiers. About 140 hostages remain in Gaza, with more than 100 having been freed as part of the truce. Until the bitter end, Henry Kissinger was one of the trusted few in the tight circle of a distrusting President Richard Nixon. That trust, combined with Kissinger's intellectual heft and deft manipulation of power, made him a pivotal player in a tense period in history. The giant of U.S. foreign policy died Wednesday at age 100. His power grew during the turmoil of Watergate, when he took on a role akin to co-president. But after Kissinger left government, he was dogged by critics at home and abroad, who argued that he should be called to account for his policies on Southeast Asia and support of repressive regimes in Latin America. The death on Wednesday of former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has drawn admiration and scorn from political leaders around the world, highlighting the complicated legacy of Kissinger's views about what it meant to serve America's interests during the Cold War, and how the country should exert its influence. Kissinger, who died Wednesday at 100, was one of America's most powerful diplomats. During his years serving under Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, he shaped the country's foreign policy in ways that led to breakthroughs. But his tenure also overlooked the rise of brutal regimes in other countries, and critics argue his approach left lasting damage throughout the world. Japan has suspended flights of its Osprey aircraft after a U.S. Air Force Osprey based in Japan crashed into the sea during a training mission. Tokyo says it has asked the U.S. military to ensure the safety of all Ospreys operating in Japan. The Osprey is a hybrid aircraft that takes off and lands like a helicopter, but can rotate its propellers forward and cruise much faster, like an airplane during flight. The crash of the U.S. Osprey on Wednesday killed at least one crew member. A search is continuing for the aircraft and the 7 other people on board. Russia's Supreme Court has effectively outlawed LGBTQ+ activism in the most drastic step against advocates of gay, lesbian, and transgender rights in the increasingly conservative country. Ruling Thursday in response to a lawsuit filed by the Justice Ministry, the court labeled what it called the LGBTQ+ movement, operating in Russia as an extremist organization, and banned it. The ruling is the latest step in a crackdown on LGBTQ+ rights in Russia under President Vladimir Putin. The Justice Ministry brought the lawsuit, arguing that authorities had identified signs and manifestations of an extremist nature, by an LGBTQ+ movement in Russia that incited social and religious discord, although it offered no details. Amnesty International called the ruling shameful and absurd. The pressure to phase out fossil fuels is mounting on the oil company chief, who is leading fragile international climate negotiations in what some say are contradictory dual roles. Sultan Al-Jaber is president of the United Nations Conference of Parties talks, and he's also chief executive of the United Arab Emirates National Oil Company. Al-Jaber took the hot seat with published reports that his nation planned to use the summit to strike oil and gas deals. Al-Jaber and climate talks leaders might have relieved some of the pressure with a first-day announcement, Thursday, of an agreement to fund a new program to compensate poorer nations hit by climate extremes. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley are increasingly outsourcing central parts of their campaigns. They're drawing on the growing urgency of Donald Trump opponents to find an alternative to the former president. DeSantis this week privately encouraged his donor network to support a newly formed super PAC that's taking over advertising responsibilities. Haley's self-described scrappy political campaign won the support of the Koch network, the largest conservative grassroots organization in the nation. The extraordinary reliance on independent groups is testing the practical and legal limits of modern-day presidential campaigns. Shane MacGowan, the boozy, rabble-rousing singer and chief songwriter of the Pogues, who infused traditional Irish music with the energy and spirit of punk, has died. He was 65. His family said in a statement Thursday that, "It is with the deepest sorrow and heaviest of hearts that we announce the passing of our most beautiful, darling, and dearly beloved, Shane MacGowan." The singer died peacefully early Thursday with his family by his side, the statement added. The musician had been hospitalized in Dublin for several months after being diagnosed with viral encephalitis in late 2022. He was discharged last week, ahead of his upcoming birthday on Christmas Day. In the depths of captivity in Gaza, they formed an unlikely but prized friendship. Danielle Aloni and her 5-year-old daughter Emilia had been seized from a kibbutz by Hamas in its October 7th rampage into southern Israel. Nathawari Munkan, a Thai agricultural worker, was abducted the same day. The three became close during their 7 weeks' captivity in Gaza. They were freed on Friday under the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. For a few minutes this week, they put aside the trauma of their shared ordeal to celebrate their new friendship, the Alonis speaking in Hebrew, Nutaweri in Thai. Their joy transcended language. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Friday, December 1st, 2023. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.